Order, can I get, for the record, Jill has an excused absence today. Is she online? I think she said she was gonna be online. I don't know if she made it.
Allie's Jill online.
No. She did talk to us about it yesterday. So next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? Nothing? Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the August 18, 2026 work session agenda.
Can I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, motion carries, agenda is approved. We'll now move into our discussion, beginning with our special education presentation. Aye.
Good evening, guys. We have some special guests. I'd like them to be able to introduce themselves.
I'm Ariel Zamron. I'm a parent of a student receiving special education services in Sunnyside.
We're gonna pass the mic if that's okay.
Hi, Cody Gardner, Special Education Director.
I'm Dana Wellner. I'm the Assistant Special Education Director.
So we're here to talk about some updates. At last meeting, we were, in actually June and July, Mrs. Zamron was able to provide some public comments for us in regards to special education. There's been a community survey that she has sent, and we wanted to be able to speak with you tonight in regards to a little bit of what we have done since that time in July. So the purpose, if you notice, you should all have a handout in front of you. I thought it would be helpful to just start off with that. We've all gone through this. So Ariel, myself, Cody, and Dana have prepared for you in collaboration together this presentation. We were also able to share a little bit of the thinking with Raquel and Sandra on Friday. So the purpose today was to provide the board with a concise update on actions taken since the last board meeting, how the district has responded to the identified themes and patterns of the parent survey, and our next steps that have already been underway. As we go through this, we want you to, it's a discussion, so we want you to be able to be free to talk and ask us questions along the way, and less presentation, more discussion. And I've had one-on-ones with all of them just to inject as we go through it. But I thought for the purpose of being able to facilitate, I just launch and then we would go through it. Sound okay? Okay. So what we heard is that we had 25 anonymous responses from families, staff, educators, and community members. And we had some recurring themes. Last time at the July board retreat, or the board meeting, you were given this from Mrs. Zamron in regards to themes and patterns and some recommendations that she had stated during her public comment. So we use those as a jumping off point to think about what there may be things that we, based upon that feedback, that we could do differently in the district. And so some of the themes that came to the top was communication, inclusion, family partnership and support, and accountability. And so you can see within that handout a little bit more of the description within that. And the details that you were given at the last board meeting gave it a little bit more of some of the quotes and things like that from the community voices. Before we move on, I want to make sure if there's any questions from the board or if there's anything that Mrs. Zamron wanted to add in before we move it into kind of what we've done since in regards to that. So anything from the board as far as questions, but after you received this from Mrs. Zamron?
Thank you so much. 25 to me is a big number, and I think it's important that I'm glad that, even though it's a little bit of responses compared to how many students we have, it's still 25 families that took the time to put their input in. And I'm glad that you guys are, hearing them and we're following through with something because, yeah, it's just, I keep hearing it's just 25, but just 25 is important to us. Everybody's important.
It is, for sure. And I think that we have, do you know our number of students on IEPs? 778. So it is about 3 to 4% of it. But I would honestly say you can learn one from one parent to be able to improve a system. So N size sometimes matters when you're talking about validity and reliability of data, but that didn't necessarily, that's not a significant factor to us. But we want to talk, we'll talk about some additional surveys that we've got.
And I did just want to add really quickly, just on top of that, Raquel, I think more than anything, it stands as an indicator that there may be an issue at hand. And that's really what I hope that, you know, as a team and me bringing it to the board, we can work together to identify gaps in services. And it looks like up until this point, we're off to a pretty good start. So I'm really encouraged by the work that we've been doing together.
Thank you. So what has been done so far is Cody did meet with, what's that? Do you feel more comfortable calling you Ariel or Mrs. Amron?
Ariel is fine.
Perfect. So it matters because a lot of people can't even pronounce my last name. So sometimes people just prefer to call me Angel. So Ariel did meet with Cody. They went through the survey results. That is helpful because if we don't know better, we can't do better. So that's super appropriate for them to sit side by side to be able to go through them. When you go to create systems, themes and patterns really matter. So that was something that we had selected to do, is looking at those 4 major themes and also the recommendations. On August 4th, Ryan and myself had met with all the administrators during what we call our admin retreat. And it was important that we reinforce one of the biggest concerns that came from that survey was on inclusive activities. So, there's a phrase that our superintendent and myself said side by side in front of all the principals, and we said, all in unless unsafe to do so. And the context behind that is the concern of students being excluded from activities with their grade level peers. And, you know, either in one instance was a play day at Sun Valley, or maybe it was a graduation or whatever that is. There isn't anybody that we would say would not think that that is important for all of our students to be included. And so that has been addressed. And the term all in unless unsafe to do so is something that when we talked about this, it was very strong in language of being a directive. And so that was really important. I don't think spirit of intent was lost in there. I don't think anybody intentionally excluded students or did any of that. That wasn't the case in this. But I think it's important that we calibrate with the administration what that means by all means all. And so can you give us some examples of when it might be unsafe for our students to be excluded?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very rare, but I think of some students that have sensory issues. If you've ever been to a high school assembly, there's a lot going on there. And so we've had students that it's just too much for them. Some students, they can tolerate it with, you know, noise canceling headphones and those types of things. Sometimes there are students with like compromised immune systems. And so parents have requested that they not be in crowded, you know, spaces. So really, if it's just something like an overstimulation or a health thing, other than that, there's really no reason that students should participate in most of our activities.
Dana, anything you want to add on? I think the other one I think about is like medically fragile students. We don't want them in the middle of dodgeball, right? So things like that is just, in the instance, especially at Sun Valley, we've had a lot of dialogue on this because they're our youngest learners. And so they also had that as another factor, not just there may be something that is one of the ones that Cody had suggested, but also their age is a factor. But that is one thing that was really important that we say right out of the gate, that it is, we stood in front of the administration and said that you really, when a teacher comes to you and says, I don't want my students to participate in something, as administration, we need to say they do. And so that if we diagnose and we go through all of that, that's a little bit of the culprit of some of the situations that we've been faced, is that we're supporting staff versus being able to say, no, we have a strong belief that all does mean all. Yeah, of course, elaborate.
So when I spoke with Angel this morning, I did just I feel like this is a great start, but I did think it's important for us to define the term unsafe for administrators, what might be, and then I kind of asked Angel too, how are we making these decisions? Are we engaging with families, parents? Are we ensuring that we have proper support? And I think the biggest thing for me with this statement is this decision coming down to one person in a building? If it is, how do we put a process in place to kind of touch base with Cody and say, hey, Cody, this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me identify maybe some support that I'm missing? And I guess the bigger theme behind this should be at a district level, it should be harder for schools to exclude our children rather than include our children. And just kind of building off of what Angel said, I've heard that statement a lot. These kids are young. And with my son in particular, in my personal experience, he was diagnosed with autism. So for me as a parent, I recognize that these experiences can be very valuable to him. Even if it is very uncomfortable. One thing in my research is that I am continually seeing that early intervention is key. So I think that a lot of these, when we exclude these kids, they can be missed opportunities. So I think just being able to kind of have a discussion with Cody or even Dana or someone else to be able to say, hey, what can we do to include these kids? And then really just having like an extra set of eyes. I think even beyond that, just having an extra set of eyes on this decision-making process, that can go a long way to just really ensure that our children are included whenever possible.
Really well said. I think the other thing is when we refer to early learners, it had the upping of supervision is important, but it doesn't need to be a barrier. So sometimes when buildings are doing things, they may not know that they have resources outside of theirs that to lean in on. So like, for example, if it was one of the ones that was an example of somebody needing help with a wheelchair or something like along those lines, we can provide support from us. And I'm going to draw a support model up here in just a few minutes. But those are just examples of shining a light on it and then surround sounding to make sure that we support our students. On August 14th, actually August 6th, we all met together to review the recommendations, the 4, and then identified some practical next steps. And we're going to share those with you in a minute. And then we met, Sandra, myself, and Raquel and Ryan met on Friday just to see if there's anything else that might be hopes and wishes from the board that we could do tonight. But we wanted to make sure that that was included as well. So with some influence, one of the immediate next steps that we did was we updated the special education brochure. This was helpful because a lot of what we were hearing from Ariel was the fact that she may not know what resources and support she has to afford to her. And so we thought that, and when we showed this to her, she said that she had never seen it. And so one thing that that influenced that is because having her son be part of the special education program just in the last year or so, is we thought this is one that we have to solidify to make sure that all families are really included with, so that they have those special education basics is what we call them. But there's a lot of information in there that we thought would be beneficial. Do you want to talk about the history? This isn't brand new, we've had it, but do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, our goal is just to get, to be honest, there's a lot of complex vernacular in special education. We have a lot of acronyms and we throw those around a lot. And I think sometimes it goes over parents' heads. So what we wanted to do is make a very parent-friendly, just FYI, this is what special education is in the basics, and just kind of a user-friendly term. In fact, a major driving force of this was our special education interpreters who work with the parents quite a bit. And so they were really pivotal in kind of giving us a different lens on how to make a very parent-friendly version of this. And so this is something that we've had in practice. We typically send this out with all new referrals. So anytime there's a new referral, a parent should receive this in the mail with their notification that the child has been referred in their procedural safeguards.
So it's been part of our processes and procedures. I think an extra touch is that knowing that once they get it in the referral process, when they actually qualify for special education, is to slow the game down to go through it. That is the role of the case manager, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that is one thing that I feel like we need to tap into more. Other things that, so based upon in the last couple of weeks, we've actually revised this. Do you want to talk about some of the revisions we've made?
Just kind of an update, some different terminology has changed. There's been a couple changes to special law with regards to timeline. And then we just wanted to we always put like a newer version of like some definitions of some of our, with inclusion, some of our settings have changed a little bit. So we've updated just some of our different service delivery models, some locations of services. And then we're still in the process of updating some of the resources at the end, though. We want to make sure those are all still current and valid.
Okay, so that's good. I feel like I'm trying to model good teaching. So every 10 minutes or so, I'm going to pause and reflect and see if there's any questions that the board has or any clarifications.
Just, could you guys break down a little bit what inclusion is? If you don't mind asking, like the pull in, pull out, and can we go just a little bit into it? Because I know that that's probably like gonna be a lot of questions. Then maybe parents don't know what inclusion is and what does it mean? And so if you don't mind going over that for us,
You're
please.
right, because
Okay.
yeah, for sure. I'm glad you asked the question, because one thing is there's difference between being included in activities and then a really truly inclusion model for education. And so we've, you want to elaborate?
Sure, yeah, I think part of how this started is included, a child was not included in an activity, but inclusion really begins with how can we support each student and have them receive services in the gen ed setting? So we want to pull them out as little as possible. And so, to be honest, about 8 years ago, we were one of the 10th lowest in the state with regards to our inclusion numbers. So the metric that OSPI uses is what percentage of the child stays in the gen ed setting 80 to 100% of the day. So if they're in 80 to 100% of the time, so maybe they're just pulled out 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day, the metric that OSPI uses gives us a category, a percentage. And so we went from one of the lowest in the state to now we're well above the state average for that metric of 80 to 100% of the day is in the gen ed setting. So we worked hard to provide services in the gen ed setting. We've worked hard to not pull those students out. And so that's been a heavy lift for us at the secondary level. At elementary, it's a little easy to get your core instruction in ELA and math, and then also receive those ELA and math services in a resource room. But when you go to middle school, you don't want to have a math class in gen ed and a math class in resource. So we have to really make a choice at that point, like where can we provide those services? So I have some data I could show that shows year by year what school, how we've progressed. And then it's really interesting data to see. It wasn't an all-in-one flip of the switch because that's not the right way to do it. We've done book studies, we've done site visits, we've done teaching with our staff, we've done groups. And so it's been a slow process, but we're really starting to see really good results with our data.
And I think to add the definition that was on here, and I think it was maybe on I couldn't remember if it was on one of the documents from Ariel, is thinking about meaningful opportunities for students receiving special education services to participate with peers whenever appropriate. We do believe that to our core. We do. And that is, when you talk about our strategic plan, we have one whole priority on culture for belonging. And I know that we were talking about the benefit of special education students benefiting from inclusion. One of the byproducts, I believe in this, is for all students. I think that it is important that we talk about that for our students that have special needs. But I think all of our students should feel the positive impact it is when we mean all means all. Want to elaborate?
Yeah. I just want to add really quickly. I think it is important as a district for us to really define what inclusion means, because I think when I brought this to light, it was brought to me, well, what it means to you may mean something different to someone else. I think it's the opportunity of this district to really put that definition in place so that every family understands what that means. And just to, elaborate a little bit more, that OSPI survey that we're discussing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, that's from a survey that's being sent, that has nothing to do with Sunnyside.
We'll
No.
go into that in just.
Okay.
Yeah, we have.
So
I don't know if they know what we're talking about on the
Okay.
OSPI survey.
I think it's important and I've brought this topic up with Cody and Angel. I think it's important, and we're already discussing this and making plans to do it, but to really get a good idea of what the inclusion rate looks like in Sunnyside, it's important for the district to engage with families and have conversations. Sometimes they're difficult, but I feel like with difficult conversation, growth comes. For me personally, I had to learn what inclusion looked like when my son was excluded. And I think it's just important for us to recognize that inclusion is very important for our children, not just for my child that needs a little bit more support, but also for other children to learn to engage with their peer that may need a little bit of extra support. And the same with my son, to be able to learn how to adapt to his environment. And I feel like if we just put a little bit more emphasis on making a plan to make that possible, that can go a long way.
So Ariel just described a little bit of what we were talking about with the OSPI family survey. And so there is one that Cody's going to describe, and we've got some information. Ariel mentioned it's a few years old, and he's going to talk about why it's a few years old, and then what our next steps are with both that and then also a homegrown survey.
All right, so OSPI provides 20 different metrics to measure our special education department. And one of them actually has to do with parents' involvement in supporting their child's education. And so OSPI has adopted a survey from the National Center for Special Education Accountability Monitoring. And so this survey, actually, they spent 2 years developing this survey to ensure that it's considered statistically valid. And so what they do is they provide this survey to every district in the state. And so, but it has been on a 3-year rotation. So unfortunately, this data is 3 years old, but we've been getting this data for the last 15 years. So they've now changed that to where we will be, our parents will be given this survey every other year. And so what they do is this is completely independent of us. So they pull our rosters, they are able to determine the primary language for our families, and they send this survey out. So we don't get involved in that at all. And so one family of every child on an IEP receives this survey. And so these results, while dated, are pretty interesting.
We have one for Ariel.
Oh,
I know we already gave it one
yeah.
when we did our planning meeting.
So kind of the metric I use is if you get it like, from agree to strongly agree to very agree, and if you add those percentages up, the data actually is fairly good. And if we were to score low in this, OSPI would come in and direct us to do some action. In the last 15 years, we've not been at that threshold that's required any corrective action. In fact, of the, I think 26 items, only 2 scored less than 50%, being to the agree, strongly agree, and very strongly agree. And it captures a lot of things about parent involvement, parent value, parent understanding. But there were a couple low ones, and that has to do with resources in our community. And we discussed that as a staff meeting today, and it's true, like there sometimes could be limited resources. And then also a question about specific special education related training. We had a good discussion about that today as well.
So even though like when Cody was referring to, we've never had corrective action in special education from OSPI, but with data, you can always learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 2 that he said that he was gravitating towards with the staff today, because they have an annual special education day where they have every staff member. For elementary is 1 day, secondary is another because of just sheer volume. And one thing that we were having a discussion about that led to step number 3 was providing a short family feedback survey. So we know we have an audience of every family every year during the IEP process. So instead of waiting the 2 years for the OSPI formal survey that we're obligated for our families to do and then to get the results, we'd like to do it every year, but in a shorter, concise way, because I gotta be honest, if I'm a family, there's a lot of questions to answer. So we asked Ariel's feedback about on the survey, which ones that she thought that might be beneficial for families. We then are also asking our staff. So Cody asked elementary and Dana did today. They're going to talk to secondary staff on Friday. And then we're also going to filter it through through our principals. So what will come of that is a condensed version of ones that we're really curious that we'd like to get feedback from families. in an ongoing way. And we feel like it's authentic. It's on the heels of an IEP meeting because that's exactly when you're talking about services and support for children. And so that's thinking about number 3, building a short family feedback survey. Okay, there's my teacher wait time. How are you guys doing? Questions so far?
I think you did mention this, Cody, but I might have missed it. You said the 22, 23 are the most recent we have?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
will actually get the survey again this year, which will be
Okay.
nice. So, and
Perfect.
OSPI is changing it to now every other year. So beginning in 2026, before that, it was every 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And now it's going to be every other year,
Every other
but they are going to actually look at tweaking the tool a bit. So it will not be these exact questions most likely.
Okay.
But we will get this a survey of some very similar to this year for all of our parents. And I think that usually goes out, I want to say usually December or January. And again, it's completely independent of us. They pull our rosters,
Right.
they send them out, and every family of a child on an IEP gets one.
So one thing that we thought about, this is in regards to hosting a family resource and support forum. The data was on both the survey from Ariel and then also OSPI's. I think education for our families is really important. So being able to provide professional development on it. And one thing that really resonated with me with that Ariel had mentioned, not only in her board comment or her public comment, was also when we met, is I don't know who I go to when I need help. And I also don't know who do I go to next if I didn't get the help I needed. And so something I shared with both Sandra and Raquel on Friday, I felt like it might be beneficial for Evaristo and Anna to see it as well. Do you guys think, was that beneficial for Friday? Okay. Okay, so this is outside in support. Oh gosh, it's gonna be weird with that mic. I'll do my best. Okay, this graphic is not isolated just to special education. This is how we do business in support of not only our families, but you're going to see as staff. So we talk about it's outside in support, but it's also an accountability model. So I'll show you the reason why. So if you got this little image here, you've got our families that are in our center, our students and our family. They're in the center of all we do. In addition to on the outside of that circle, this will be fun, is thinking about our teachers. Okay, so that's the next, we believe the people that should be provided the most support for our students are the people that are the first responders, which are our teachers. That is extremely important. For the most part, I don't know the thousands of students. I have relationships with some, and I know I have power and influence, but the person that has the most influence is their teachers. Yeah, go ahead, Raquel.
Angel, I'm so sorry. I just thought about the cameras on that side. So I wonder if we should just move you over here or back here.
Oh, I could do
Is
there.
it-
You may be Jill.
I think it
Actually,
only,
do that?
it only shows, yeah,
Ellie's
yeah,
not commendable.
Is it coming in both? I can be Jill.
yeah. Just
Right, you wanna
so
move it?
they
Is that
can
one?
see and then also the
Just this
recording.
right there, so Jill, I can put it
Please,
right where
thank
Jill
you.
spaces. Or I could also do that. Sure. Would that be helpful, Raquel?
Yeah, just
Okay.
because I know that like people that are online aren't able to kind of see what you're
Okay.
doing and then people that are here too.
I can get a poster. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, Evaristo, I'm so sorry. I'm like cycled. Okay. She was worried that it wasn't on the camera. Yeah, that's a good point.
You guys good? See?
There we go. Okay. So I am a teacher with my marker. See, here we go. So outside, and this is once again, I'm going to preface this. This is a support model and an accountability model. We do this for the way that we support, we communicate, this is what we would call the outside in support. Here's our families. Our next layer of support are our teachers. After that, okay, guys, just don't judge me with my circles. I'm not an art major. The next one is our support staff, paraprofessionals, our academic support specialists, things like that. So support staff is after that. After that, we have administration in the building, principals, assistant principals, people along those natures. After that, we have our directors. Cody, Dana, Doug, Maria Seha, our directors. After that, we have cabinet. Okay, cabinet. Our lovely people over here. Then after that, we have our superintendent. All right, superintendent. Then after that, we have the board. So this is a framework we have had instilled since the transformation of the high school, because it was helpful for us to see who the support is from the outside in. And we can never lose sight of our families and our students who are in the middle. Because if we do all of our jobs along the way here, these guys are going to thrive. Okay. So for example, in regards to the concern that, and she hasn't seen this, I talked through it, but I thought it would be helpful when we were meeting that I drew it from them. But first and foremost, the teachers are our first responders. They know students more than we do. Okay. But in special education, we also have 3 special other people, which is in regards to this, well, supports case managers. Cody, do you want to describe what a case manager is?
Ones that are responsible for implementing and developing the IEP with the team. And so they're the lead. And so they're like, whatever's in the IEP, it's their responsibility to ensure that that's conveyed to everyone that comes in contact with that child. They're the ones that take the lead on setting up the IEP meeting, scheduling that with the parent, getting everyone at the table. So they're kind of the lead for all things related to that IEP.
So in this instance, when we talk about it, these 2, in this case manager is a certificated staff member. They are a teacher. Okay. So when you think about this situation, we have teachers that are gen ed teachers in elementary, secondary have many teachers, but even at the secondary, they still have 1 point person. So in the instance of supporting families, specifically with the lens of special education, this person should know the child inside and out. Okay. So when Ariel, when we were describing the special education basics, that is their point of contact. They are their first responder. They're their first support. Okay. Teacher may know a little bit of it in obviously support of their IEP, but they may be a content specialist. This one is the content specialist for special education. Okay. In addition to a case manager, we also have an IEP team. Okay. And then after that, we also have special education advocates. So when we're talking about how to support our special education families, we have a lot of surround sound for them. So to answer Ariel's question in regards to, I don't know who I should go to for help. This is what we would like our first forum for families to be able to be driven around, so they know exactly who their point of contact is. And if and when, in her words, what happens if I don't get the support from my case manager? Who is my next person? And then who's my next person? Because a lot of the things we hear is we may have a parent go directly to a principal or a parent go directly to a director. We really don't have context of the child. And then what we will do is we will go all the way back to the case manager, because they're the experts in what the student may need. But if they don't, we obviously have influence, like gathering a team together, IEP team, to be able to make mindful choices for our child. Okay. So far, so good. Was there anything that I said on Friday? Is this resonate? Is it good to hear it twice? Okay. Because the other thing is like for this, I'm a systems girl. Like this is what my role is. So when we start to think about if and when, even when Ariel was describing stuff for her, or like concerns for her student, I may not be able to help support as much because I'm so far removed from it, but I can gather people back in. So to answer a question, in some of the scenarios, the first point of contact is that case manager. It is the teacher. If and when they don't get the support they need, now what do? We can gather an IEP team. We can support with the principal. We can tap in Cody. You see how it goes to the next layers. So I thought it might be helpful because this is what we do all day long. We get parents that come, we have teachers that come. And so like a scenario in bilingual was the teachers in the dual language program are getting ready for school. They felt like they need more time. Okay. So what they did was they said, oh gosh, I need support. I just happened to bump into them in the hallway, but I'm way over here. So I said, let's tap in Maria Ceja, let's tap in Miguel Puente, let's tap in their instructional coach, Jonathan Babcock. So there's lots of different support, but it wasn't me physically being the one that fixed it. So you want to give some examples of a scenario that we pop up a lot in special education?
Yeah, I mean, we'll often get, and we're always here to listen, and that's our job, but we'll get parents that will come and request a meeting with us, and we're there to listen, but the special ed law is very specific that even of the parent and the director, we cannot make changes. It requires that team. So again, we direct back to the case manager that's aware, and then anytime we make an implement or a change to the IEP, I can't do that. The parent can't do it. It requires the team. So this very specific law that protects us. We want to make sure that we're always directing back to, not to say that we're not there to listen. And sometimes it's very good for us to understand what's going on because it's good for us to be aware. But yeah, that's,
Of course, yeah.
So I think that this, and I discussed this with Angel earlier, I think that this point of contact is really beneficial to add to that updated special education brochure. I think that parents need to know, because for me, in my personal experience, I didn't know that the case manager was the teacher. I didn't learn that information until I started having discussions with these guys. So I think that this is good information. Okay, perfect.
I don't know if I captured
Yeah.
that one.
Oh, okay.
That was one of the revisions.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I think that it's important to, one of the things that I kind of mentioned with Angel too is what really concerned me and what really brought me to where I am today is that I familiarized myself with special education law and the laws that protected my child. Even with arming myself with that information, I was still going up the chain and met with no. And so one of the other things that I mentioned to Angel is if we have this support in place, how do we know that these decisions are not falling on any one person? So for me, for example, I brought concerns of additional speech requests. My son has occupational therapy. He was hitting. So I followed this chain of command, went to the teacher, scheduled a meeting with the principal, and I was met with, well, we are not, an IEP amendment to us seems a little negative. So we're going to allow our staff the opportunity to correct it before we have to do an IEP amendment. I knew that that was not what the law states according to what protects my child. The reason why I got so desperate is because I was going through that for a year of meeting with a principal, trying to get a plan in place to help my son stop hitting, a principal putting a plan in place on his own without engaging occupational therapy, speech therapy, without engaging that other line of support of the IEP team and the advocates. So for me, as a parent in this district, I would expect that the principal and the teachers arm me with that information of, hey, that's not something that I'm aware of. Let me reach out to Cody for some extra support. Because of my experience, I was never familiarized with this, and no one told me about that until I started asking questions, which again is why I went straight to you guys, is because at that point I thought to myself, if it's this hard for me as a woman who familiarized myself with the laws that protect my child, speaking English, being able to find enough confidence to be able to push back when I was told no, I thought to myself, I can't imagine how difficult it is for a parent who doesn't know the language, who doesn't have parents that have worked in this community, in this school district for years, who doesn't have the connections that I have. That's really what drove me to be where I am today. So yes, I agree, this is great to put here, but what plan do we have in place? And this is conversations that I had with these guys too, is what plans do we have in place to address concerns when this is not being followed?
I have a question.
Sure.
Also, so if nobody, the circle thing and everything, I mean, do you add, is there like, example? Is it goes, okay, this person is, you got the name there and the name person they can go to. If that doesn't seem to work, then is it a clear line that people can follow? Or is it just a circle saying support group, their titles and everything, but not really their names?
It's a really good question. So the reason why frameworks is really helpful, because then they're consistent and predictable and they're easier to understand. So for example, we completely agree. We don't want a parent to struggle for a year to be able to figure out what resources and support. And I know sometimes we talk about skipping circles, like if it going from a family straight to like the assistant superintendent or whatever that might be. But in reality, we're never going to shy away and not talk to families, but we're trying to provide who's the content expert within that circle to give them the best support possible.
And that's kind of my point.
That's
what I'm
exactly
trying to- is like, I mean, the titles are good, but you can get lost in all that bureaucracy right there,
Mhm.
especially when you don't know the system, you don't know the words.
For sure.
Some of these titles are pretty big and people don't really know where to go to. So I think that this is good in a sense, but if you had a kind of a pass saying, well, this doesn't seem to work, you can reach this person. Second,
That's exactly right.
if it takes a year to get to here or to here, could this drag out for about 5 years?
It shouldn't at all. And so in this.
I mean,
which is what-
I guess, well, let me ask you the question more directly. Is there a certain time limit that each person has? So if one person can sit there and drag their feet for, if it happened, I'm just saying, for 2 or 3 months, not saying nothing, or maybe 6 months, and the parents doesn't hurt anything, then the whole process, when they finally get to here, how long is that gonna, you see where I'm getting
Yeah,
at?
I see your concern. My simple answer is this: no way. We would not want it to take any, our goal is, it's almost like a 5-second rule, right? You want to be able to support in real time. So for example, this is a support model for everybody in those circles, not just families. So for example, the example I gave with teachers being able to, bump into me in the hallway, I'm 4 circles out, but within 2 hours, I was able to provide support, or thinking about a teacher or a support staff leaning on the principal. So when we, at the district office, we believe that our job is to support the buildings to function.
Okay.
And so our goal is that if and when we're trying to build the capacity within the building to be able to provide the real-time support, because you're absolutely right. Bureaucratically, if I all of a sudden tapped in, it may take longer time.
Yeah.
Versus the teacher who is right across the hall or the principal that is in the building. The case with Ariel is she felt like she did go through several of those circles and didn't get the support she needed. But a lot of it is that tapping in those 3 that she didn't know was afforded to her. The case manager, being the IEP team, and the advocates. That's the special lens with special education. It is not time bound. I would say all of us in the space administratively, probably engaged in the circles 20 times today. Like all we do is problem solve all day long. And so our goal is to try to get the most effective and most immediate support for all of the people in there as much as we can, because it's the same thing. Like a principal came to me for sponsorship today. That is my job. I am accountable to make sure the principals are successful. So that's like an example of that. So it is definitely not time bound at all. Good
Okay,
question.
so you're against having any kind of time limit on it because you guys feel that you do it speedily, right?
Yes, in a
Do
lot
it
of
as soon as-
cases.
so
Yeah,
what-
that's a goal.
So just as a plain devil's advocate here,
Yeah.
is if somebody just, well, I can put that over here, I can put that over there. That kind of, it leaves a lot of wiggle room. Don't you think it'd be easier to say, okay, well, you have this amount of time to respond, and then I can respond that time.
Mhm.
I know it might be a little bit harder, but at the same time, that kind of levels it off, because if a family's like, well, you told me you're gonna get back at me and you didn't, I don't have a time frame. That kind of drives them a little crazy, don't you think?
I don't blame him. Yeah, no, and that's not our
And
goal
I
at all.
think if you say,
Yeah.
well, we're doing the
Yeah,
best we
make
can.
sure everybody's-
I think we're saying if we're doing the best we can, I think it'd be better for them to say, okay, well, I'm gonna, in 2 days or 3 days, that kind of stuff, and I'm just throwing it out there because I can see how, even with the best intentions, how this can, especially when you're dealing with 10 or 15 kids,
Mhm.
I can see how that people can get swamped and they may get lost in all that,
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair. I want to ask, because he asked the question back, we're absolutely right. Our goal is efficiency and the most content expert to be able to provide the most appropriate resources and support. That is the goal. And I would not, if I was a parent that wasn't getting the support, or if I'm a teacher not getting the support from maybe, a director or whatever that might be, we fully expect them. I don't like the move it up the food chain kind of comment, because I feel like that whole circle represents our whole Sunnyside School District family. Like, we're all in this together. And I genuinely feel like in my circle all the way down, I have a moral obligation to make sure everybody's healthy and happy in those circles. And I think we all believe that. But we're not perfect, but I also think that it's helpful for us to know who the next person is. You used a really good phrase. What was it? Like, as far as an account of, I don't know what it was, that, like, even when they didn't, how do you move it to the next one? Do you remember what you said?
The next level of support.
Next level of support.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of add on to that and provide a little bit of clarification too. During my year at the school, I did engage on a regular basis with the case manager as well as with the IEP team. I got to the point at the middle of the year where I was emailing the IEP team members, the speech therapist and the occupational therapist directly for support because I wasn't getting responses back from the principal. And when I was asking for support, those decisions came down to a principal. Mind you, the principal isn't a speech therapist. He isn't an occupational therapist. He doesn't work directly with my child. So naturally, as a mother who recognizes that a child with autism thrives with early intervention. That's why it's important for us to put timelines on these things because I'm on a year wait list for speech therapy, year wait list for occupational therapy. Like Cody said, there's very limited resources in the Valley. So a lot of times when I wasn't getting responses back from the principals, I did get desperate and I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? And so I did just want to add that I do think it would be beneficial to have a timeline on this because I can't just be waiting around trying to figure out what a principal decides when it comes to what support and services my son receives. And to be honest with you, I think that it's just a practice of, it's just good practice to be able to provide parents with an expectation of, I'll get back to your email in 2 to 3 days. I think especially, and this is a topic that I brought up with Angel multiple times, is special needs children require extra support, but the parents of special needs children also require extra support because we're dealing with a lot. I have evaluations, I have IEP meetings, my son goes to Prosser twice a week to get therapy services. This is on top of a full school day. So I don't have time to be waiting around to receive a response from this team. So I did my best to work with, I worked with the case manager the entire year. Didn't know she was a case manager. I wouldn't have been able to guess. And I also engaged with the IEP team. But I do think it would be really beneficial to tailor this information to specific schools. So that way, when a student goes to each school, the parent knows who exactly to contact if and when there's any gaps in services.
I
That
think
was
that's
really
what I
well
was
said.
going to add too.
You wanna
I
discuss?
was looking for the circle for this on here.
Yeah, there is no circles. for
Right,
This is just.
but
we can-
something similar to
Yeah.
it. Under who is what you're saying. Okay. So I see this more as the definition of who that person is. It doesn't kind of look like a step, you know? So I think that maybe, maybe titling it different or explaining it more. I do agree. That's one of my suggestions is maybe tailoring it to each school. Like if you have an info, one of the sheets as info, like who is this person at Harrison? Who is this person at CK? Who is this person at, and have their names and emails. And then that way it's just more, how do I say it? Easier to follow. Because this I see, this is great, but I see this more as a definition of what the student is, what the parent does, what the administrator does. And it doesn't really coincide with this, if you look
And we
at
should
the-
have those conversations, IEP. You want to talk about?
Yeah,
that?
I think what we could do with the IEP is just, I mean, you had a case manager, you just didn't know it, and that's the person in charge
Right.
of.
So we gotta get
so
clear.
As part
Yeah.
of the introduction to the IEP, like,
Yeah.
my role is, I'm the case, because we may have, at the high school, we may have 9 different case managers.
Yeah,
So it'd be tricky to capture that all and
yeah, or do
staff
it for that
attrition and
specific
whatnot.
student.
But I think if, as part of the onboarding process,
Mhm.
to really be clear about, especially the first IEP, like, just so you know, we're gonna do this every year. The case manager will change year to year, because that's
Mhm.
often what happens. but introduce ourselves at the IEP, that I am the case manager. I am responsible for the IEP. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm the first point of contact. I could be the one that will set up the IEP. In some cases, that may be channeled to the principal concerns. In some cases, it may be channeled to me, just depending on what the nature of the concern is. So it's not always going to be a clear, it
Yeah.
really does depend on what the situation is.
Could it be something that is done through like a flow chart, right? Like you would
For
put
building.
per building, right? That gives you more of a clear, like who is the person that you would contact? So maybe like a flow chart would be good. I do have a question on this right here is more of like when you've been accepted or to get accepted, right? So what happens when students don't qualify for an IEP? What support services do they have? Because I think of students that if they're struggling because they have a disability or they're struggling because of the attendance, they missed a substantial amount of school, right? So if a parent or if the student doesn't qualify, do they know specifically what's the next steps or what type of support systems they have?
You want to talk about it if they don't qualify?
Yeah, we usually do provide recommendations one way or the other. So if they do qualify, then we talk about the plan and we develop an IEP plan and look at what services are. If they do not qualify, we're very clear about why. Oftentimes it has to do with maybe they're not far enough behind, or maybe there's not a health condition. Maybe there are some environmental factors like attendance, like you mentioned, or language acquisition sometimes can be, a rule out factor that we want to put a label as having a disability on a child that is learning the English language. So we're very clear about why they may not qualify. And then we also do provide recommendations as to what supports they could get. As we're continuing to build our MTS system, and I know that we've talked a lot about that's also going to be some immediate supports. So it doesn't feel like, well, special ed is the only intervention in town. We want to provide immediate interventions prior to this. Would be the ideal, and that's what we're working towards.
I had a question about Child Find. I remember when I used to work for the district, I used to help at Child Find and I would do their screenings for them, like their
Mhm.
vision and their hearing.
Mhm.
I don't remember them. Does a child need to be referred to Child Find? They can just attend?
Yeah, we
Okay.
do notices in the paper, what's the Spanish news channel?
The KDNA?
Thank you. Yeah, we
Mhm.
do that. We'll do something on our website and we'll open that to all 0 to 22. And so that's just one event that we do. Child Find actually is something that we do every day. Like we're always trying to
Right.
identify students that are in need of special education services. But we do have like a family community night where we do have our school psych, our SLP nurses, they all are together in one location, and the parent can go from station to station to get screening.
Yeah, it was really cool. I participated a couple
Yeah.
times and it was really interesting to see how they're observed and, everything that they have to go through that day. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
we do that once a year.
So we wanted to give an update in regards to the parent forum. Now, guys, when I draw outside and support, that's just the way my brain thinks, and that's what we've done for, a decade. And it's because it kind of it's able to transcend any content. This is not a special education model. It just is a framework for us to be able to think about how we support the people for which we serve. And I think that one reason why by naming them is it brings value and expertise to every role within the district. So I think that that's important to see that, like, I gotta be honest, I dance in special education, but these guys are our content experts. It has been a minute since I was on an IEP team, if I'm being honest. So that's why it's just trying to leverage who the experts are within our system to provide our support for our students and our families, but it's also for our staff. So for example, the principals all the way through into the middle, that is their purview to support. And then same thing. That's why it's very intentional that the board's on the outside, because that is the layer of support for all within our SSD family. So in regards to the forum, we wanted to be able to, we believe that not necessarily if we draw this, but it's really truly that education. And maybe these are who your people are within your building. That is your support. That may be what we do for the forum. We've already scheduled it. Do you want to talk a little bit about what date and time we're thinking?
Yeah, we're looking at October, I think 22nd.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got it actually reserved across the parking lot there. And we've had events in the past. They're generally not the best attended. So we've always been struggling to find a way to how do we get more parents to show up. So we used to do one in the fall that was about, this is special ed, this is how you make a referral. In the middle would be more about like the IEP services, and then we do one in the spring that was more about like transition and like post-school planning. But again, we would have maybe 4 to 5 parents show up to these. So we've been struggling to figure out a way of like how to maybe connect to another event. But it's been a while since we've done that. So we went ahead and scheduled that. And now with technology, perhaps we could get through our, not Parent Square, it's
across the hall.
Optigi, because I always forget the new name of that. But I think there's some different avenues that we can try to increase our parent participation in these events.
Where is that going to take place?
Tech Center.
Here? Oh,
What it reminds me of is things like my highly capable symposium that I do, where I bring families in, we feed them, we educate. Those are things that, it just, and Cody is right, we have done it in the past. When it comes to special education, we don't want to wait to the events to provide support and and learning for our families. So that's why we really are excited about the feedback survey in real time. If we see something on that survey that triggers support, we're not waiting to the end of the month. We're not waiting until that's another touch point that we felt like it would be helpful to do that last action, which is continue listening and refining. And so, so our first forum in October, we thought that just based upon this is thinking about who are your people, who can help you in real time. And then also to be a feedback loop of what else might we need to consider to be able to improve our system. This is something that we do. We will, we listen, we'll move on to action. It's parents are one of the stakeholders within this, but it's really important that we value all the people within our support. So that's like when we didn't want people to be like, Cody and Dana thunk up a new feedback survey. We want to make sure we engage everybody so that they have buy-in and commitment to it, so that the teachers aren't sitting at the IEP team meeting and being like, why do we have a new survey? We need time to be able to vision it so that they have value, because they're going to influence it just as much as we will. And so that's why Cody and Dana, when they met with the teachers today, they got feedback. What questions would you like? And some of them were the exact same questions that Ariel and I thought. So I think that's neat. We just needed to be able to do that. And so, but that's how we've done it for highly capable. That's how, thinking about our dual language when we did our parent academy when they were part of their committee. So that's along those lines.
I do have one more question. So how do we ensure that the student is receiving like their specially designed instruction and not just being put into the general education?
That's a really good question.
So yeah, that's a very.
Pass the mic.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
So we, even today we talked about the different modes to provide. So it could be in co-planning, co-teaching. We can do the SDI development by the special ed teacher, which is designed, supervised, evaluated, monitored by the certified SPED teacher. So there's it's not a one size fits all. It really depends on skills of the students, strengths and weaknesses. And so but yeah, like it's the law. So we need to ensure like there's no like just
no gray.
No, we're obligated. And so the IEP is a contract that it spells out exactly to the minute how many services the child will get per week and in what area that would be, gen ed, special ed, like resource, kind of through a co-planning, co-teaching model. We do have what we call like a life skills setting too. So it really depends on the situation and the skill level of the child, but it is definitely spelled out on the IEP clearly, like what that will look like.
I think the other thing that when we were having conversations, at any given time, any family can call an IEP team meeting. Like that is within their right. If and when, so when we were talking about of course, we want to be able to, have teachers, support staff, the case manager, but in any given time, the reason why it's a team is everybody has different expertise around that table to really make sure that our students that are, have learning disabilities are supported. And so that was another thing that's part of the forum. At any given time, you have the right to just gather a team of people to be able to support. And it is nobody's intention to put barriers up so that we aren't, because in reality, these are our most vulnerable populations of anyone that needs to have expedited support and services. We believe it is them.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Cody, I know you said like it's the law, right? But who monitors that
So
it's actually getting,
the case manager is responsible for that.
okay.
And so, yeah, we do have language that pertains exactly to that, to ensure that schedules are aligned with the matrix. The matrix is the page that we kind of spell out on how many minutes to ensure. So it is the case manager's responsibility to ensure that the IEP is being implemented and followed.
And do they have like meetings regularly, or is it that the student or the parent has to make those meetings, or it's like, all right, it's time to schedule these just to make sure that that the monitoring is happening?
So yeah, so at the bare minimal, there's a one year per IEP. So every IEP occurs on a yearly basis.
Mm.
But in terms of making sure that it's being followed, like at the high school, we're on a trimester. So every trimester, there may be a new group of teachers that need to be made aware of the accommodations and the modifications. And so they do that at every time there's a change in teachers. We have systems to ensure that those IEPs are accessible and provided to the staff working with the students.
I think also
Go ahead, Dana.
they have like time built into their schedules where they can collaborate with each other and work together to like not only just share like the IEP and what the goals are, but that's when they do work together to co-plan or plan their co-teaching out. So they are like built into their daily schedule or their weekly schedule. They do, kind of depends on what building they're in, but they do have time to work together and to collaborate on that.
I do have a follow-up question. Sorry, when you're talking about like trimesters, right? They switch out with teachers every trimester. So do teachers get into these meetings to talk about like the next student that they're going to be serving?
Yeah, so that's
Or-
the case manager. So there may not be a formal IEP meeting.
Okay,
I'm sorry, there may not be
I
a
know.
formal IEP meeting, but the case manager is connecting with those teachers. And so,
okay.
as Dan alluded
Part of the
to,
role.
there's an extra case management period that all of our special ed teachers have. So they have an
Okay.
extra prep period in their day to give them the time to, in some cases, develop the specially designed instruction, co-plan, co-teach, work with students. So there is some allotted extra time and days for our special education staff to ensure that they're fulfilling their responsibilities.
Which are called PLCs, correct? Well, I mean, or when they get together. Okay.
They attend PLCs, but they actually have an extra, what we call case management.
So they have two plan times.
Mhm.
Okay.
One specific to special ed and the special ed.
And one for
obligations.
general.
Mhm.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ariel.
Just a really quick question, then I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. So if that plan is not followed, is there any oversight from your guys' team to make sure that IEP amendments are being taken care of? Or so is there any connection between the school and what should be happening and the special education department?
Really good question. This is, go ahead.
We review
reason
every
we la-
IEP.
yeah.
Yeah, every IEP we review. It's a lot, but we do. So we ensure, like, we review every IEP. We find errors in some cases. In some cases, we've had to call parents and say, we are aware that there's an error that's been made. You're due for compensatory education. So we do have oversight of the whole program. There's compliance issues that the state mandates that we do. So we, plus the state's always coming in and looking at things as well. So they're, it's a very rigid a monitoring system overall, from OSPI to us to principals. So there's a lot that goes in. There's a lot of paperwork, as you know, into IEP meetings. And so there's a lot of legal compliance that we look for, that OSPI looks for. Every month we submit to OSPI a list of all of our students and what they call LRE categories. And so there's a lot of oversight from our office as well as OSPI.
I think one thing that there, Cody's being kind of humble in what he just described, and Dana, they have personally read every IEP this year, and every re-evaluation. The reason why I'm saying that is foreign. I don't know of anybody else that has done that, and in their colleagues in the ESD, because we are really passionate about making sure that that law binding document is followed. So what they then do is they take it back, they give feedback directly to the case manager. This needs to be corrected, this needs to be corrected, and then they've got a rubric that they score it, and then they are relentless to make sure that it then becomes compliant. That is extremely time consuming when we have that many, but it has paid off dividends. It's professional development for our staff. It is something that has been important. I know that they built time in their schedules to be able to do that, and that is rare but we knew that it was important to get it right. And so that was something, so that question was, I didn't even ask her to ask that question. That was a great question, because that accountability is really important. And go ahead.
Oh, no.
Jason. One more, Ariel. There you
I just want to add really quickly to that. it sounds like a great process when it's working, but we're talking about, and I think the forum was built off of my recommendation for a committee. The reason why I recommended a committee is because there is no system in place right now where families are able to go to when they don't reach an IEP amendment like they asked for in my experience, and I was given a no. So like I said, it sounds like a great process. What happens when I don't even get to those steps or I'm given a no? So that builds off of my recommendation for a committee. Is I think it is important to be able to be honest and say, this doesn't happen perfectly all the time. Period. It doesn't happen perfectly all the time. What are we going to do to make sure that those gaps are corrected in a timely manner, and make sure that when a parent asks for an IEP amendment, that that's done in the proper way, that's done in a timely way, and that's done in a way that follows the laws that protect our children? Because for me, I didn't see that, and I think I think the forum is great. I think if I'm honest, I think it kind of puts the responsibility on the family to come in and educate themselves, and I think the focus needs to be on how do we support families in the event that this process doesn't work?
Yeah, and we've had committees in the past with this, and the reason why historically a special education committee has been a challenge is, one, when we're talking about this content, a lot of the information that is shared is highly confidential. So when things that are shared in a public forum with individual cases for concerns, we start to get a little dicey with things, especially when the IEP team is not at the table for it. And so this is our nod towards still having families be able to do it. So I know the concern from Ariel is that it's a one and done. We don't have any intention that that would be it. We are more interested in providing real-time support and in like I mentioned, real time, so that we don't have to wait to a monthly meeting to be able to do that, is to strengthen within the circles to be able to do that. And that in regards to the, like with, I know, I like the idea of a standing one-time thing, but I would more like to be able to do, when it comes to not getting the support that they need, is that there's clarity within the support that may be moved up in the accountability lens. And because we've done, and I am trying to give the examples, but when we did a committee, we actually got our, how do I say it? It was hard because when some of the content that was shared there was really sensitive in nature. And then we started talking about staff, and when this team is not there to be able to talk about a confidential document, it gets really dicey on privacy and rights of families. And so that was the only concern that we'd shared, but that's something we can think through a little bit more. We at least wanted to start to go forward in regards to educating with the forum first. Cody, anything you want to add on to that one?
I mean, in saying this, I hope that parents are aware that I am approachable. And I think in your situation, had you come to me, I think we could have talked about some of these issues, but and I do have parents that reach out, and in fact, almost daily. And so I just hope that is out there, that like a principal, I'm approachable and I will sit down. Now, we can't make changes to the IEP with that, going back to the IEP team meeting, but I want to really hope that parents understand that that's my role, that's my world, is to ultimately ensure that all of these steps are happening. If a parent feels that they're not, I would hope that they would reach out to me.
And so what our next steps are between now and October is to make sure that strengthen all the circles within that, so that they have complete buy-in and commitment to what that first one is. We don't want all of a sudden, because when Cody mentioned there's not possible, or that we would like to increase our attendance. Well, we need to make sure that everybody knows about it, being able to engage with teachers, with staff, with principals, directors, things like that, so that we can make sure that that is really well attended. Sometimes it's things like, I provided my family's food for highly capable, and they love just to sit around and have conversation. That might be a little bit more of the lens of what I believe the Ariel's intent is, so that they have a space that they can come talk to people. and maybe in a little bit more informal way. That's what I hear that she's saying. So I think we can be able to blend those recommendations.
Yeah, I think that this is a great start. I think that parents, it can focus on resources. And like I said, even to get Cody there to engage with families to say, hey, this is the support that we have. This is what we offer. And then just kind of off to the side or just a paper that says, if you're experiencing this at this school, fill this out. We'll follow up with you in X amount of time. It doesn't need to be, I recognize that there are some privacy issues at hand. And I do also just want to address your comment, Cody. I would have loved to meet with you had I been made aware of who you were before I got to that point. I sent an email at the beginning of the year, and my husband can relate to that. I was in the beginning of the year, didn't know what to expect. I was scared. I have a son that's on the spectrum. I don't even know what autism means. So I sent an email to Cody and the teachers and the principals and everyone on the team. And I was met with at that first initial meeting, in the future, instead of CCing our director on an email, you need to let us do our jobs first. So I gave them a year to do their jobs. And I didn't hear from you, Cody, through the duration of the year. And that for me as a parent is difficult because I struggled a lot. Learning the language, learning the laws, learning what laws were in place to support my son. And this goes back to this process. It's great when it works, but how do we know that when parents are falling through the cracks? How do we know when families and children are falling through the cracks? There needs to be some kind of oversight from the district, from the special education director and this entire team to ensure that, number one, the principals are educated on the laws that support our children and protect our children, and to make sure that things like me going to principal and asking for support and being told no and never getting an IEP, those things shouldn't be happening. And I think that it would be really beneficial to just, and I discussed this with Angel too, the oversight needs to be the special education department. It should not depend on one principal at a different school, and I'm battling every single school I go to, and that depends on whoever the principal is. That was also mentioned in the survey. It's something different in every school. So I think the takeaway should be, I don't want this discussion to be at an individual school. I think it needs to be district-wide. I think that there needs to be oversight from the special education department. And as long as we work together, we can identify those gaps and figure out how to make this process easier for families and their children with special needs.
Taking a step back again. Yeah, I think Ariel at the end described exactly what our next steps are, and I think when I referenced it earlier, we're systems thinkers, so it shouldn't be a one-off for one building. This is just, it should be in that regard, districting in regards to continuing to listen and refine as we go through this. And so we know that this is very much attached to our strategic plan. It is very important to get this right. And so we wanted to be able to have this as an ask. You had asked us to come do an update. We fully expect you to keep continuing to ask us more about this. And so, but that's whatever the board feels like that they need. But we wanted for you to see even the steps that we have done in the last few weeks. But it's always hard sometimes because there's been things that we do that we may not present out or share because it's just the work that honestly we do all day long. So just when you get curious about what you want to hear more about, that we're here. Any final thoughts from the board?
I'll say thank you, Angel, for facilitating this and getting all this together. Thank you, Cody and Dana, for being here and teaching us, because we need to learn, just like everybody on there should learn what their role is and what the next role is. We need to learn about it too, so we're able to teach people that are asking us also, like, this is the process. But most of all, thank you, Ariel, for being such a strong advocate for your child. I know it's hard being up there, but thank you so much for coming.
I have a question, one last question for Cody. You said to her that I wish, or you hope that people know that you're approachable. Have you done anything in the past to kind of convey that to the community, that I'm approachable, you can come to me if there's any issues?
I have a lot of parents that do naturally. So in terms of.
So they just not- they just-
Because I'm kind of like the principal of the program. So I think a lot of parents feel like they can reach out to the principal. So they may go to the principal, but they may go to me. But I do on almost a daily basis, I have parents that reach out to me. Now,
So they
again,
reach out, they reach out to you, but you don't go out there and say, look, if there's any issues with the community, or you don't speak in kind of a public way, or puts notices
No,
out
but
there
that would
on.
be something that we could maybe do some more messaging on.
And also, if a second, the majority of the Hispanic community, do you say that, or do you explain it in Spanish, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm a person you can come to, that kind of stuff?
We do have two special ed funded interpreters. And
Mhm.
so it's really nice because they've formed relationships with the families over the year. And so they're really a good lens of feedback to us too. And so they do our messaging. So they attend all of our IEPs.
Well, the reason I asked it, because you said, I hope that people know they can
Yeah.
come to me.
Yeah,
And if you hope, that means that you don't really know.
right.
And so if, it's not very hard to get out in the community and kind of explain to them, look, if there's any issues, you can always bring it to me.
Sure.
To get that message out there
Yeah.
through interpreters or whatever it is, flyers or whatever that kind, going door to door. I've done it myself. And so if you want that message out there, you can get it out there. It's not very hard. And
Sure.
the community's not that big.
Sure.
And I think that the community would appreciate that, because they see you out there and they say, okay, well, if I ever had an issue, then I can go to this person.
Yep, makes sense. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So next item on our discussion is budget review with Ivy. And who? Oh, and Luz.
You guys know these chairs?
They're not comfortable.
That's all we have that's all we have room for in the budget, okay, Ivy?
It's Angel's fault. She took them all for professional development. It's all right. I was just like, wow, I've never sat in one that long. They're not the best. Yes, those.
Thank you.
No, I was just being ornery. You know me. I'm ornery. Okay, so I'm gonna wait till Anna gets back. Just waiting for Anna. She had to use the restroom. Okay, so tonight, what I kind of wanted to go over is more of a pre-presentation before our budget hearing on Thursday, and let you guys maybe come up with the information you would want me to have available for you in the meantime before Thursday, because our time on Thursday is pretty short. We have the budget hearing and then we turn and burn right into the board meeting. And so this is our first time together. I've done a budget with Jill, but not with anybody else here. And so I just wanted to make sure that we had time to gather any questions you had ahead of time and get you the answers. Now, I normally pride myself on being able to rapid fire answer you all the questions. I'm going to be transparent and tell you that I'm living now in 2 fiscal years and my brain is already starting to get a little clogged. And so be patient with me. I'm happy to get you the answer, but I might not know it right off the top of my head. And the budget document itself is what I would call confusing and lumpy, because a lot of stuff is lumped together. And so it's not even anything I can look at and just go give you an answer. I have to go and dig back into my data to see where it came from. And 80% of it doesn't come from me, comes from Chris's office, comes from HR. And so, because it's personnel data, so it's all loaded in there. So we can get you the answers, absolutely. I just might not have them at the tip of my tongue, but I can follow back up with them through email or in person, in email and in person at our budget hearing on Thursday. So I wanted to go over just a little bit of the process with you, like how it works, the timeline, and kind of what has gone into this. And that will maybe help guide some of your questions that you might have, since it does probably feel, you know, intimidating to approve $120 million. But I always just pictured, you know, take off 3 or 4 zeros off that and just picture the money like that. Helps make it a little more clear in your head. So the budget development basically starts back in January and February when we start predicting enrollment. Okay. So we start predicting enrollment, and that's where we get our, where we start determining staffing levels based on how many kids we're going to have. Because basically almost every single dollar we receive in the district is based on enrollment. So the first thing we have to do is try to predict our enrollment and predict our staffing. And once those staffing things are set, we can start working towards the next part of the budget. And I'm sorry if I didn't introduce her. This is Luz Madrano. She's my fiscal coordinator. She is my left and right hand. Brian and I both actually tried to convince her to take this job. She said no. So, but I would have died 10 times without her. I will tell you that. She's, I can't even put it into words. So she's amazing. But she and I sit down after we have those enrollment projections, and we do the next part of the budget, which is predicting revenue. So the budget, first we predict revenue, then we backfill in expenses. So the main part of the budget that, like how I see it, how I was trained kind of from Jeff, the previous person, is it's a capacity building document. We go through and figure out how much revenue we think we're gonna bring in for next school year. And then we build enough capacity in the budget that will let us then spend that revenue on the appropriate services. So we pulled up the current year revenue, the previous year revenue, and all those enrollment projections. And we go revenue by revenue and try to determine exactly how much revenue we're gonna have next year. Not over project because we don't wanna get to the end and run out of money. Not under project because we don't wanna run out of capacity. So I would say we spent about 3 days on it. Just sitting together going, okay, pull up this report. What was this for? Why'd we get this money? All the way down to the money we brought in from the Blink charger at the high school. Just so you know, that doesn't make us any money, but it doesn't cost us any money. It's pretty much a wash. But so we get into all the different revenue pots like that. So we determine our revenue, and then we start bringing in the HR data from Brenda Meyer. She creates a big chunk of the work because a huge part of our budget is personnel. And those costs are basically already fixed because those people are contracted for the year. So we bring in that, and then we see what's left, and we start going and thinking, we know we have to pay the insurance premium. We know we have to pay the light bill. We know we have to pay our subscription costs. We know we have to pay our data services. How much money is left after that? And so that's kind of what we did. So that work is due to the ESD by July 10th. Luz and I had projected to get it to them by about July 8th. And then WSIPSI decided to take our software down for a full day on July 6th. So we got the to them on July 10th. But we did not hear back from the ESD until August 5th, I believe, when we were at WASBO. So we just gave them our corrections back because they had about 39 adjustments that we should make. We got those back to them last week. And then this is the document that was provided to you, the F-195 summary. So Wanda at the ESD, she's very good. She went through it all kind of with a fine tooth comb and checks it to make sure that she doesn't see where we've made any mistakes or overstated anything. Now, all of this is very much a skeleton, an outline per se. I tried this year to make it more realistic. I will tell you that previously, for probably the past 14 years, it was just rolled year to year to year and just increased. And so we went this year and we tried to at least get program dollars aligned. So we went through and figured out how much revenue a program had and how much expenditures a program had and tried to line those up to make sure we were working with some of the best data we could do. In some cases, we found, I'll give an example, special education, because we were just talking about it. We previously, they were not getting specifically budgeted for all their contract services. So like this year, we worked with Cody to get his list of all his contracts he had. And we made sure to increase that capacity because those contracted services currently weren't being budgeted for. So those are some of the things we did. There is 5 funds that we build a budget for. The biggest one is the general fund. I can tell you that Luz and I built the transportation vehicle fund in probably 2 hours. We built the capital projects fund in probably 2 hours, the ASB in about 2 hours. The debt service fund is a little harder, probably took us 4 hours. And the general fund took us probably 7,550 hours. Didn't really, but it felt like it. So that is where the most of the work goes, just because that's where most of the money goes. And that is where we have a lot more funds and a lot more codes and federal dollars and state dollars and local dollars. So that's where we spent a lot of our time. This
is the only one that's not, they're gonna continue to breakfast when we out losing
Something
once
that
the
was just a little easier to digest.
They're eventually gonna get there
Kind of
because
snapshot. I went through and edited it a
after
little
the
bit to
bill.
make it make more sense. It just to
I
me is
remember
kind
during
of
the,
a prettier
that means
view
you eat in
of
a classroom,
what is
right?
in
Oh, so
this
Ricardo,
document.
I don't know if it'll get to you, but
And on the second page, it kind of goes
able
into
to
how
advocate for the egg in the
these
morning.
funds are up in the general fund.
The hard boiled egg. No, the scrambled egg with cheese.
We have to.
No, that's for
have
lunch at our
our
school.
Budget filed with the state no later than August 31st. So then at the board meeting on Thursday, if we're able to answer all your questions and everything goes according to plan, you guys will pass a resolution for that budget, and then we will file it with the state. The other thing that we're bringing to you at the budget hearing is a budget extension. It's pretty common. This budget extension is for the current year. It's to increase our capacity. We received 2 very large grants after the budget was filed last year. So we didn't have necessarily capacity for them in the budget. We received the summer school grant for $1.2 million, and we received the 21st Century Grant for just under $500,000. So neither one of those were in the budget when we created the budget. So now for next year, I have already put them in the budget in the hopes that they continue on, which 21st Century we already know is continuing on because it was a multi-year grant, but the summer school thing is kind of we're pretty sure, but they haven't come out and told us guaranteed, but they do anticipate it continuing. So I have budgeted already for it in this document, so we wouldn't have to hopefully come back to the table for a budget extension next year. We are allowed to bring in as much revenue as we can. We don't have to come back and say, hey, we got more revenue. Do you give us permission to take it? But we do have to come back to you and say, hey, we need to spend more money. And so that's what the budget extension is for, is by the time we pay those summer school expenses in August, where the majority of them land, we will have exceeded our budget authority for 25-26 because those grants weren't accounted for. So the budget extension we're bringing to you on Thursdays is because of that. So that's kind of my overview and spiel. And now is where you tell me what you would like to know before Thursday.
I am. So my first question, Ivy, can you tell me what the timeline looked like prior to us? Because I feel like it's really rushed. So I don't know if we missed something, if we kind of didn't schedule it correctly, or how it has been in the past. Just because I don't know budget, I'm learning. It's a lot. And so I would have loved to have it earlier. I know, we didn't get it still last week, but there's so many things that I'm trying to teach myself on this document, and I want to learn more about it. And like you said, we're not just approving $1,000. It's huge. So I would like to learn more and have it in earlier. So can you just teach, how has it been in the past?
Sure. So this is only my second one.
Okay.
But this is how it's always been in the past, except minus this meeting. Before, you would have just rolled in on Thursday, been handed the budget and gone on and approved it. So definitely, I've talked to Ryan about this. I am not against breaking it into some chunks, even from like the budget development piece and kind of
Yeah.
chunking it out. We wouldn't have like the official document from the ESD because the ESD has to prioritize the districts by their budget hearing dates. So I think
Right.
it's called Class 2 districts have to be done by July 31st. So when I sent Wanda my budget on July 10th, she told me, when's your budget hearing? Because I have to prioritize these. So she's going to work on them in order.
Mhm.
She also, I would say, is about 75 times more thorough than the person she replaced, because when I gave him my budget last year, I think he had 3 corrections for me. She had 39.
Mhm.
And I did it better this year.
Yeah.
You know, I did it more thoroughly. But I kept all of those notes. So next year, hopefully I can improve on that process also. But in the past, this has been how the process is.
Okay.
Other districts, I've poked around a little bit. Some of them do it. They try to have more of like a budget, like a work session kind of thing in July to go over some of these questions and move towards August. But we can build it to make it more digestible in the
Mhm.
future a different way. But no, we didn't. This isn't a departure.
Okay.
And I only know that just from, like I said, last year was my first one. But I sat with Jeff in 2024 when he did his last one. So-
And how difficult is it if we, because I have questions. How difficult is it because I know we have a timeline to meet, a deadline to meet. If we approve on Thursday and then there's stuff that needs to be amended or changed, is that a difficult process?
Well, we don't necessarily need to amend it because it doesn't change what we do in practice. It's basically a skeleton. So all we are doing is saying is spending authority. So it doesn't mean just because it says we were going to spend $2 million on utilities, we have to spend $2 million in utilities. None of that has to line up at the end of the year. It's basically just put into build capacity. So all you're really approving, if you see the resolution, is the total dollar amount and capacity. You're not approving necessarily any of the intricate details.
Oh, okay.
So that is done. That is kind of the work we work on every month throughout the year, where we talk about these are the kind of things we're purchasing, but we wouldn't have to do anything if you approved it on Thursday and then said like, well, we have some issues on where some of these dollars are allocated. We would like to look at our options for changing that. Like that doesn't tie us to anything in the budget. All we're
Okay.
doing is approving capacity.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
The things that make us, that are harder to change are things that are already contracted. Subscriptions that are contracted, employees that are contracted. We can't really change the light bill much. But other than that, the document, when you see the resolution, you're just approving that $1 amount. It doesn't necessarily, like rarely do what we put in this budget line up to what happens at the end of the year exactly. And you can kind of see that on some of the columns. It'll show like what we spent the previous year to what was in the budget, to what's in this budget, because it truly is a budget just to create capacity.
Mhm. Okay, and I do agree that if we can break it up and start having the conversation. I know it's hard because you have to wait for ESD to give you the recommendations.
But there is a lot of data that we
Yeah.
could definitely digest, and
Yeah.
then we could just update if there was a change.
Right, so yeah,
So
if
we
we
can-
could start with
We
the
can definitely
conversation.
Start earlier, break it up into some mini sessions,
Yeah.
just to help you guys. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. You say you're learning, I'm also learning.
Mhm.
Like it was my second budget. I learned a ton. I sat there and had many moments of frustration because even the system you work in is not that easy to use.
Mhm.
Luz, thankfully, she had a lot of background info and she was able to help me because of a process that we do together in the year end, but that she's an expert on. Because even using the software is a big learning curve and it's complicated. But having the ESD have to review it doesn't stop us from having preliminary review of things and being able to dig into what some of these things are earlier. So I am 100% in support of that. Sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I had a question. So the summer school fund, I'm sure you said it, but it's in here and what what bracket would it be under?
General fund,
A
but
general fund.
I put capacity in the 26-27 budget for summer school. So I already built capacity for this coming summer school of 27.
Okay,
I put capacity in this budget under general fund to account that we will probably get it. Now, if we don't get it, we wouldn't spend it.
okay,
And
that's what I
so-
was gonna ask you.
yeah.
So it's not like a pocket or like a little lump sum that if they, let's say next year, they say, well, no, we're not gonna do it.
Then we
Then
just
we
wouldn't,
can't pull from there.
we wouldn't have to pull, we just wouldn't spend those dollars because we
Okay.
wouldn't hire the staff, we wouldn't buy the supplies. So
They would just stay there,
it would it doesn't stay there because it's just
It's
paper.
allocated, okay,
It's more like in your mind. It's not,
Okay.
like, there's really no money that has happened yet. It's just basically making a game plan. estimates.
Okay.
The other thing that, we could even, go into deeper, like in September, and then October, we're gonna have, like, that's where we'll have our final, like, for where we ended fund balance wise for the current school year. We could dig into some of these questions on a different level, because in September, we'll have more information because we'll have enrollment. All of this is based on enrollment that was set in February. So you guys review the enrollment every month. What was set in February, from that point, we lost 50 more kids. So all of those things are going to change based on what we see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Tuesday, basically the first 10 days of school. We meet every morning to review the numbers, look for any kind of weird spots where we didn't have kids show up where we expected to see them. So even though the budget was set, all of our revenue expenditures could change after those enrollments come in, because this is just truly, it's the state making us make our best guess.
I passed by the apartments on Lincoln the other day and I thought of you because you know how we were saying like every time you pass by there, you see if they're occupied and they're starting to get occupied. So I hope that brings in some more kiddos.
Yeah, so far, what we've heard is they're renting out the studios and one bedroom. So we haven't seen any enrollment rush from it, but we're still crossing our fingers.
I do want to echo what Raquel said, if like moving forward in the future, if we can get, some work sessions even in before, just so we could understand it more. I think one of my main questions too is when we're looking at the general fund page, right? Right here where it talks about the enrollment of like 24, 25, 26, 25, 26, the enrollment did go down, but then our expenditures went up. So that's where I would like to have a breakdown of what all entails of why is it that enrollment is going down, but expenditures are going up.
Yeah, we can kind of dive into what caused those expenditures to go up. A lot of it has to do with IPD, our basically our cost of living increases, like our health insurance increases and increases like insurance and utilities that have only climbed. Fuel prices are higher, but we can kind of break into that. Yeah, general supply costs, if you guys have bought groceries, you've seen your costs go up. We've also seen our costs go up. While you guys were talking about special ed, I was over there looking for a cheaper monitor because someone has a ticket in for a monitor. And I'm like, that just seems expensive. So because we're always trying to mine those dollars to make sure we are not exceeding those costs. So one of the things you'll also see, Sandra, is like our enrollment count has gone down, but necessarily our revenue hasn't, because why we get those IPD costs, the state also gives us a small increase in what they're giving us per student. So both sides go up. The problem is when your expenditure side outpaces your increase in revenue. So that's what we're trying to manage and mitigate. Because then on top of all of that, we have that looming bond transfer payment that we have to make every year out of our general fund. So, but yes, we could definitely look at like what caused those kind of increases. We touched on it briefly at the retreat in June. We kind of did a thing about the budget. So in my head, I envision that maybe instead of like, I got 30 minutes, maybe we do 2 or 3 hours. And we kind of go over some of those things just to help everybody learn and grow and get more information about it.
Yeah, because that was another question too, like on the next page, the supplies, instructional resources and non-capitalized items, just that jump to, right? So like what specifically made that 2.99 million in supplies and materials jump?
Yeah, and some of those things, like what I would be able to show you if I broke this out, and I can, is that some of those big changes came because no one had upped the amounts for several years because they were just rolling the previous year budget and then maybe throwing money in one pot, because that's kind of how Jeff did it. He rolled the budget and moved forward and didn't give ton of scrutiny to the different detail because it was pretty much business as usual. So that's where I said like the one I found last year, the student that we had going to the special school that was so expensive, it was not in the budget. So that's where some of those pots, you'll see a change because I was trying to get them more appropriate to what's happening in the funds.
Before we move on from page 2, so speaking of the special education department, I see that it decreased 1.5 million. And then I see that there's 0 projected for Medicaid reimbursement. Do we not qualify for that? Or do we not get Medicaid reimbursement? Or do you just not estimate that in the beginning?
I'm trying to see what page that is.
It's page 2, under special education instruction. It went from 13.9 to 13.3 last year, and then 12.4.
Yes, so 12.4, we did go through, you remember, and made some staffing adjustments this year. So
You're
those
right.
are in place. We also have, we no longer have our student going to the special school. So those costs have
That's
come
right. You
out.
said he was going
Yep.
to be done.
And so we tried to make those as realistic as possible. Also, Cody was able to hire a couple positions back in real people. So we were able to let go some of our contracted services. So I tried to go and adjust some of those things to make the special ed pot more realistic. For Medicaid, we get one kind of Medicaid currently, which is the like Moments Medicaid.
Mhm.
And it's definitely, it's not under special ed. It is regular Medicaid. What is it called, Luce? The admin match. And so that is the kind of Medicaid that we currently get.
And then another question I have on this page, for the building administration and central administration, I see that also went up, page 2. Is central administration, does that include like district office or? Okay, so I noticed that it's 9, let's see, 9 in 24-25, 8, 9 in 25-26, and now in 26-27, 9, 8.
Yeah, so those were actually, like the 21st Century Grant is landing right now under central administration because I just threw it there. So that's 500,000.
Okay.
It's just sitting in there. Also, the special ed contracts, a couple of the ones that weren't formally being put, they just got thrown in there. It's just kind of in the general special ed. So not necessarily to the exact building or program where they were. So those were the 2 biggest things that were that big increase in central administration.
And then building admin?
Same thing, it is probably either contracts or, because we didn't add any staff in those areas, so it's not staff driven, it's either aligning, like a supply cost that wasn't accounted for or a contract that wasn't accounted for previously. And like I said, this document is not super helpful, but we have background documents where we could give you kind of a better idea of what those costs are.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That was just concerning to me because we just made some cuts and then for it to go up and then the enrollment's going down. So I'm like, why is this going up?
No, and it's the budget every year in, because like, I know Ryan's explained to you guys before, like the state has not kept pace with the percentage of the budget that's allocated to school districts compared to the state budget. They haven't kept pace with, sub costs, sub-insurance, liability insurance, those kind of things where we haven't had any increases to offset those costs. But that is some of the stuff I tried to reflect in here and capture better, because it kind of wasn't being captured accurately before.
And then what is the community service? I only see 15,000 in 24-25 and then 25-26 and then 26-27 at 0.
Community service is what we used to put, I think, the revenue from facility rental. But we try to direct all facility rental income now directly to capital projects because the wear and tear on the facilities has to be repaired usually by capital projects. So that's where that revenue goes to. So it's just tried to correct that. ESD also recommended that we no longer use that as our place for expenditures and revenue. So we moved it.
Anyone else? No questions?
I have a question on page 20 when we're looking at maintenance, utilities and building security. I did see which is a significant reduction, which is plus, right? But what caused the savings and are those reductions sustainable? Like, will they be sustainable?
One of the things I believe, I'm trying to, what line is it on? Let me find.
64, 65, and 67 on page 20.
We did try to align the utilities to the utility saving, because we've had some savings because of our LED changes, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So we tried to line those up. Building operations, so that one about stayed the same. Maintenance, maintenance that is a place where I did trim their budget. It's not sustainable long-term, but I did trim it because that is one place I have flexibility to trim it.
Mhm.
I was like, sorry, we've got to cut back on some of the projects we're not going to be able to take. And some of the projects that we're going to have to do would have to be like a capital upgrade. Like I know Ryan has updated you guys like about the paving at Sun Valley. There is years that we might have taken that out of general fund, but we took it out of capital projects because I didn't have the money in general fund. If they wanted to do a project like that at a different school this year, I would say we don't have the money in the maintenance budget to do that project. If it qualifies as a capital project, we could look at doing that to do like an improvement or an upgrade, but we don't have the money to do it out of the regular fund. There has been in the past, I would say, pre-COVID, they were trying to transfer $500,000 every year over from general fund to capital projects to kind of build up a thing, but after COVID, it just wasn't sustainable. So they had to stop that. So that is some of those costs. But maintenance is one of the parts I have. The other reduction, Sandra, is they just paid off their mower. It was $50,000 a year. We were making a payment on a big mower. And like Jeremy had asked to buy another mower. And I told him, not now. We just can't, depending on enrollment, if enrollment comes up and it's better and we have some extra funds, then we'll look at it. But it is just, we have to operate with what we have money to operate with.
What's grouped under compensatory education? Page 2, sorry, I had one more on page 2. It's under expenditure summary of program groups. I noticed that it's a big chunk. It's like, I think it was like 19%. Yeah, 19%, 19. Compensatory education. Do you know what's grouped under that?
Let me look up
Is
the
that, I'm
notes,
thinking like
see.
migrant education program probably and like additional programs.
I see it here, but it doesn't have numbers with it. It just has words. So that's
You
what
don't
I'm
have to,
looking
you don't
for
have to
with
give me
the-
that tonight. If you-
I put a question, what is this?
Let me flag that one and I'll see what is
Yeah.
prized in there. So it does its own kind of summary here on this page, and we kind of live with expenditure codes and revenue codes, and we understand those maybe a little bit better. So we'll see what falls under that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah. So Lou's found it. That's why I tell you guys, so that would be Title I, migrant, LAP. Yes, and part of where you see, like, I think there is quite an increase in there is I went ahead and put in the migrant carryover. We hadn't been previously budgeting that, but I know they have plans to use basically beyond the allocation this year and go into some of the carryover because we need to continue to use our carryover, and our carryover is pretty large. And so I went ahead and put the carryover amount into the budget as something we could possibly expend. Thank you. How you did, because it's
Yeah, I had to also.
I had to print it out just because it's on our agenda. So yeah, I did print it out.
Extra copy here that you guys can have. And then, so then briefly, I just wanted to go over this just because it's easy to see of the other funds. And then you guys, like I said, you can shoot me any questions you have before Thursday. Capital projects, if you look at there, I left it with an ending balance of $1. And that really, that really is because I wanted to build as much capacity as possible. We do not have any big projects planned in capital projects, but if I have a roof failure or an HVAC failure, that is what is going to use to pay for that. And so I built a budget in there that would allow us to spend it all without having to do a budget extension. Like, it's obviously a project you guys would know about. We wouldn't undertake a huge project and not tell you guys. The only project I know of right now that's in capital projects is the asphalt that we're finishing up at Sun Valley. And then we did a small little project out of the UPS gear for tech because it qualifies as a capital project, but it's very small. So, but that's why it's taking it down to $1, because I basically put capacity in to spend every dollar. So if we had a major failure of HVAC units at Pioneer, which I've told you guys is the thing that keeps me up at night, or a big roof leak at Pioneer, Sierra Vista, we would have the ability to roll that project and fix those things because we already put capacity in. So that's why it took it down to $1. I don't plan on seeing it down to $1. I hope to maintain as much in there as possible, but I just wanted to build the capacity. So if we had something come up, we would be able to fix that thing and move through it very quickly. Transportation Vehicle Fund, you'll see a large expenditure out of that. And part of that is because, you know, I've talked all year about the 3 buses we were going to get in June. Well, the 3 buses have not shown up. And so now we had to roll those POs into the 26-27 year. So now we will be taking in 7 buses during the 26-27 school year instead of 3 and 4. So that's why that expenditure is so high. It's so I have capacity to pay for all of those buses. Plus, it also gave me some extra capacity if we get the approval and ability to buy some vans to transport students, that we already have built some capacity there to do that. They still have not given us the best guidance on how the van thing is going to work, so we haven't made any plans to buy any yet because we want to make sure we understand. But I did build capacity in there to pay for the 7 buses and pay for some vans if we have the opportunity to upgrade some of our fleet, because I mean, I know your priority is like mine. I don't want to send the students over the pass in a van that isn't safe, or anywhere in a van that isn't safe. Debt service fund is pretty on par. That's something we go through and we look at all the payments we're going to have to make on the bonds. And so the capacity in that is literally just for the payments that are scheduled. ASB is basically about creating capacity, because then the students are going to kind of determine the spending at each school for what they determine is kind of appropriate for their ASB fund. And so we just give them the capacity to do so, but it would still follow all the regular rules of, hey, that's allowed, that's not allowed, that's something we do or don't do. But we just build capacity in there.
I have a question. So going back to capital projects, and just leaving it at one, what falls underneath capital projects? Is that like when it has to do with maintenance, like to the buildings, or what is the criteria that?
It can't just be regular maintenance. It has to be an upgrade or a major repair or new construction. So it has to be a project over $10,000, but you can't just say like, hey, we don't have money in our general fund, so we want to use capital projects to replace all the filters in the HVAC units. That would not be a capital project. It has to be something that improves your capital. So like in the last year, some of the things we've done, we did the LED upgrade at the high school. We did the bleacher upgrade at Chief Command. We did the asphalt project at Sun Valley. So those things are bigger projects. We had a small sidewalk repair that we did for disabled parking. That just came out of general fund because it wasn't big enough to be a capital project. It is just normal routine maintenance. So we just pay that out of general fund. So that's kind of the difference. You're going to see construction projects out of capital projects, and larger repair projects or upgrade projects throughout the district, but not something we could just use to pay regular maintenance and bills out of.
Going on the general fund, how much of that can the district actually use, and how much should we keep in reserve, like as a safety cushion?
So the general fund, what we did was basically use all the new revenue in this budget. And so our goal would just to stay, you see there's a net change of $16,000. That would just mean from our ending fund balance that we have at the end of the fiscal year, by the time all is processed, if everything went perfect, we would have $16,000 more at the end of next year than we have at the end of this year. So I plan to spend every dollar that we bring in. Basically, the 16,000, I'll be honest with you, is more about a rounding thing. When you put in the stuff from especially the HR budget, once it goes over into the OSPI EDS system, it rounds it all to whole dollars. And so you always have to give yourself a little bit of a pad so you have some rounding. But our goal would be basically to just maintain. That's our hope, is to maintain. I didn't see any opportunities where we could look to grow our fund balance. I don't see that we have that at this time.
So since this goes based off of enrollment, We do have a plan B, right? If we don't meet the enrollment numbers that we're hoping.
The plan B would be a large spending cutback. And then reviewing of all positions that open throughout the year, which we already do, but instead of reviewing them and pushing them forward, it would probably be to review them and not replace people. I mean, that would be, I mean, we have to hire people before we know how many kids show up. We have kind of slowed on some of our positions that we have open right now because they're posted. But we would want to make sure the kids actually show up before we fill them. So the timing is going to line up to where maybe the first day or two, we have to start with some substitutes before we could fill the jobs, because I don't want to bring people on that we then have to lay off. It's never our goal to do that. But so that is, Sandra, the plan B is to basically, I already am most people's favorite person when they submit a requisition because I ask a lot of questions. I would definitely become the favorite person when I started denying. But I mean, there's places where we have the ability to cut things more easily than others. When I go off the top of my head, I'm thinking building budgets, levy dollars for music, levy dollars for athletics. Those are the three flexible spending for it. So I can't really not choose to replace light bulbs, right? So I'd have to go into more things that it would make people uncomfortable, but there's changes that we could make if we had to.
Well, it definitely makes me feel better knowing that it's like, once we sign, like, yes, we're approving it, right? That it's like, that's not the whole end deal. Like, that makes me feel a lot better because
No.
approving a budget like that is not, that's a heavy.
It's intimidating, I would say, but definitely, no, we can continue to discuss it. We discuss it every month, but we can go through some certain things to make it clear. But I would say that the budget document is more of just kind of like a guiding document for authority. And then every month you guys still have the ability to question and exert your authority as needed over, decisions on purchases, contracts, and hiring. So
I think I'll just give you my sticky notes, right? And then you can come prepared. Yeah.
no, I appreciate it. That way I come ready on Thursday because we have a short time. So we'll cycle through those and then,
I'll do the same, maybe.
Okay.
I'll email you.
Perfect. I appreciate it. And then next year we will work to make it a slower process just so we can all get a little clearer on it.
Thank you.
I know consensus.
Our next discussion item is
Make sure
consent.
you log into that's what the attachments are. So log into the Thursday board meeting.
Oh, no, it's my session.
Okay, so you look at the resolutions. Budget extension, which is A. B is the budget adoption.
On Thursday, yes.
Board resolution. Yep.
C is the property surplus, and Ivy will explain what that is.
Yep.
You already know, but
That is something we're asking you guys. It doesn't have as big of a timeline, but we brought it forward just because maintenance would like us to move on it if possible. So there's a small piece of grass that used to be part of the entrance to Washington where the kids walked when Washington was on the north side of our property. And so right now it's just a fenced piece of grass that kind of lives on the neighborhood on the Harrison side. We don't have any need for that property. It's more of actually a burden to keep it mowed and deal with it. So we did have it short platted. So it's not tied to the parent parcel anymore. It has its own number. So at this point, if you guys were also agreed that it was surplus, we would declare it surplus, then we would have it appraised. We would list it with a real estate agent and we would put it up for sale. And then maybe.
So we all
What do you
said,
think? Yeah, that's
the
where
monkey
the
bars?
kids used to walk there, when
yeah,
it was the shortcut to Washington when Washington was on that side.
Yeah.
So if we were to declare that, surplus and sell it, then we could put that money like back into the capital projects fund, and it would go to, help us with a project that we needed later in the district. So that's for your consideration.
Okay.
So it would be specific zoning or specific what type of property could buy it or
It's residential
residential.
property.
residential? So it
Yeah.
could be home. Okay.
Yeah, so the RCW requires that we have it appraised, so we will have to pay a small fee to have a official appraisal, and then the resolution, you're also giving us authority to hire a real estate agent and list it for sale. So then we would basically take the best offer that came to us. It's not, I'm gonna get you guys excited, it's not worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think it's somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. It's a very small lot. I could either picture it that someone puts a very small home on it, or one of the neighbors decides to buy it to make their own yard a little bigger. I'm not sure, but it's, like I said, it's not bringing us any benefit. And we can use the revenue, so that's why we're asking for your consideration to declare it surplus.
Yeah, I think we had talked about it already
Yeah,
at
we
one of the meetings.
Yep. And then D is the approval of fees and fines for the year. So if you look at those are just the updated fees and fines.
And I will give a little bit of commentary on these. This is also something that Luz and I, through this process, have decided we will be doing differently next year. We're going to ask the schools to review all of these in June before they leave, and we would like to bring this forward in July. So then we have time to get them all loaded into the system. So when the students return in August, we're already using the new fines and fee schedule instead of getting it approved on Thursday and trying to hurry and get everything, any changes and stuff updated for the new school year. So we've already marked it on our calendar to operate a little differently because the secretaries are just coming back and we're asking them, hey, can you hurry and approve your fees and fines? So we're going to move on that a little differently. There wasn't a lot of changes. What did we take off? A PE shirt because Sierra Vista wasn't using them anymore. We changed the lunch and breakfast, or just lunch, I guess, right? Or was it breakfast too? Breakfast and lunch prices, and that is due to requirements by OSPI. So we had to move up to their minimums of what we charge. Now that's only for adults because all of our kids eat free.
And so these are the prices, right?
Yes.
We're approving what that
Yes.
we're gonna be charging.
The updates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I do see that we had the waiver eligibility.
Yeah, that's.
That was the other reason I wanted Luz here is she works closer with the secretaries on the fees and fines, and then she's the one that helps them when they go to collect one of where it goes and how it works. So if you guys had any questions about that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions there?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Angel, do you want to talk about the two school improvement plans? I know Sandra was going to, but she is not here. Sierra Vista and Pioneer. Yes, they are. I'm sure.
Do you want us to leave or do you want us just to
No.
be quiet until she's done?
You can stay.
Okay.
You're not going anywhere. I know.
What did you want me
It's
to
the
elaborate
Pioneer,
on?
just the SIPs.
Okay, so this, two buildings that are in school improvement, we are required to be able to provide a consolidated school improvement plan every year. You can see the components within that. We have to talk about data, how do we close the achievement gap for students? They have plans in place to be able to do that. It's a template that we get from OSPI. They co-constructed with Sandra Ortiz, our state and federal programs director and our executive director of instructional leadership. And you can, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but the components I think that are important that you see is that it is really comprehensive to get in and out of school improvement. And gotta be honest, the WSIF, that's the Washington School Improvement Framework, is sometimes complicated to understand. It would probably take me 45 minutes for me to walk
It
through
would
all the
actually be a
data.
great work session.
It could be.
Yeah.
But it's actually a lot of the components on that is what we're looking for the metrics for our strategic plan initiatives. So that I agree with Ryan, that'd be good. There's a lot of language in here. I don't know if there's anything that the board is curious about why we do on the school improvement plans. One of the big components is that needs assessment summary, basically to be able to close opportunity gaps from students, but some of it comes down to one test score in one specific subgroup to trigger into school improvement.
And so it feels like when you think about a school improvement, most of the buildings are only in for special populations, for specifically for migrant and special education. And the other last piece of noteworthiness is it's like on a 3-year cycle. So we don't, even if the test results that came back out with us in June, when the students took the SBA, we're still a couple years out of a cycle that the data is on previous years. So I think that that's also a misconception sometimes with school improvement.
Thank you.
I think that would be good for a work session, because just when, like, looking at this, one of the questions that comes out is like, what are the measurable outcomes, right, that we expect at the end of the year? So that would be a good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The other thing that I'll add to that, just from a fiscal standpoint, is last year we had schools and school improvement, but we didn't have any grant dollars given to us. This year, we're scheduled to get grant dollars for both of our schools that are in school improvement, and they can then use those for those targeted supports. So that's always good when there's some support that comes with the expectation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Angel. C is they're the policies we've already reviewed and we've had first reading on, so they are now in second reading. So if there's no further conversation about those will go to the final reading Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, they're pretty
They were,
self-explanatory.
they were good.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we have the contract list ratification. That is Ivy again.
So the one that we didn't necessarily always see before, we were trying to systematize this to make sure that we get all the correct contracts on here, is we added the MSDR contract on here just so you could kind of see the scope. You guys get to approve their purchases all the time, but that's that first one, not to exceed $2,043,348. So that's basically a contract between an interlocal agreement between us and the state and MSDR. And they have their list of required activities for us. It provides a necessary service to the state, but it's also a revenue generator for us because we get to pull a 12.8% indirect off of those funds. So, and they also rent this space from us. And so it's kind of a good beneficial relationship both ways, but that's what that top one is for. Then we have some of our special ed ones that we were going over and talking about. I think all of the rest of these are special education. So we have the SLP, speech language pathologist services. We have more speech services, occupational therapy, and vision services. Grandview School District, we are going to provide some services to some Grandview students that are on IEPs. We do this sometimes with other school districts. When we have a service they don't have available, we'll kind of make a deal, make a contract where we decide who gets the basic ed FTE, who gets the special ed FTE. Is there another cost on top of it? We send a student to Pasco, Chris? Is that where we send the one? 2 students to Pasco. Grandview is sending a couple kids to us, and Prosser is going to send a couple kids to us too. So it's just about aligning the needs of the child with where is there the appropriate support. And we kind of the special ed directors work together to try to make sure that we can get the kids served appropriately. So that's what that contract is.
So the speech would service all the kids, right? Including SPED and general ed, or am I mistaken? Grandview too, or I'm a little confused.
These students.
Do I make sense? That what I'm
Yes,
asking? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the speech consultants for the 5,180 hours. So does that include also Grandview, or is
No.
it just?
It's just the 2 kids from Grandview that are going to come to school in Sunnyside.
Okay.
That's what that contract is for.
They don't have
Two
that.
students that are going to attend school in Sunnyside to receive our schooling and special ed
Okay.
services. So that's a separate contract there for Grandview. The 5,000 whatever hours are just for whatever buildings that.
It's divided out
contractor
for
is-
whoever has speech per building.
Yes,
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
Yep.
okay, thank you.
A payroll and vouchers.
All right, we will go to the consent document here. So payroll for July, $8,263,642. We paid 976 employees, and there was 4 kind of things that were above the norm. We have our national board payments. These are every July for $478,000. It was for 42 employees, and this is something that is expensive, but not necessarily expensive because it's a direct flow through from the state. So the state gives us the money for the national board teachers, and we pay the money all in the same month. So it's a large expense, but we do get full reimbursement for those national board salaries. The next thing is the first part of summer school. There was some summer school that happened in June when we first started our program. So $260,000 of that was paid on the July payroll. We also had some leave cash outs, and these happen, the big chunk of them happen in July. We have some leave cash outs that happen throughout the year as people retire off cycle. But for the majority of our people that retire, we had 8 retirees get their sick leave cashed out for $36,301. And then we have personal leave cash out, and these are contractual obligations where we cash out excess personal leave for people that didn't take the days off. They get paid at a reduced rate, so they don't just forfeit the time. That's $64,832. So that is payroll. And then we're into our vouchers. This is where I told you guys, I pride myself usually on knowing all the answers, but I do not. I have a lot of numbers in my head tonight, so we'll see.
I focused on the budget and didn't have many questions for this.
I didn't have questions for
Okay.
this one either.
I will say it was they were small
Yeah.
runs. We didn't have, I went through and didn't see anything that was like, wow, I better talk about that.
Mhm.
So I'm glad we're aligned.
Yeah, no, I didn't have questions on this.
Okay,
one.
so we had the 3 general fund runs, the 1 ASB, and then the capital project. So that's back to what we were talking about, Sandra, the Ednetics project. That is part of the cameras that we were doing. Loofbro is part of those, the building assessment thing that he came and talked to you guys about.
Mhm.
And then the Norpac seating is is part of that bleacher project we talked about at CK to make
CK.
those safe. So that is vouchers. I think. Oh yeah, budget status. Okay. I was gonna try to be done.
We're good. I'm good on this, yeah.
Here's your seat.
Yeah,
It's self-explanatory.
yeah.
Okay. So,
91%.
yep, we're getting
All
there.
right, Ivy, you can breathe.
Is that it?
Thank you.
You guys
Yeah,
have
I'm
a question
good.
on budget status?
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yes. I love it. That just means you guys have learned so much. Now you can read the reports without me telling you about them.
Thank you for teaching us.
We did a short executive session. It shouldn't be very long.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ivy, thank you though, because the way you send the reports is just really simple to
thank you.
read. So I really appreciate it. I know your team puts a hard, you guys put hard work into it though.
They are definitely outstanding at it.
Yeah, we appreciate you all.
I always tell them what you guys say. so.
Yeah.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is items for good of the order. Does anybody have anything to share tonight? Okay. If there's no items for good of the order, can I get a motion to adjourn the
Sorry, I'm just talking to
Oh.
Garrett. Garrett will be right with you.
to adjourn the August 18, 2026 board work session?
I move to adjourn the August 18, 2026 board work session.
Any second?
that. Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. August 18, 2026